Okay, so I'm not going to do a formal opening because I'll do that in the post edit because you don't need to hear your own introduction. You've heard it so many times, right? All right, so here we are live in Costa Rica. This interview has been a long time coming. Super excited to do this. And the first visit in Costa Rica, it just didn't work out for timing, but here we are, we're making it work. And I'm super excited because Dr. Tom has been influential, monumental for my own personal success and teachings and learnings, as well as all of the students that I've been teaching. And so I wanted to kind of deviate a little bit and a little bit of a digression, but we've heard of generational trauma, right? But what about the idea and the concept of generational wealth of knowledge? You have been teaching other doctors around the world and other individuals around the world. And I myself am a teacher and I've been teaching. And so we're looking at, just in my world right now, fourth generation of now educators and teachers that have learned directly and indirectly from you and now spreading your knowledge across the globe. And there really isn't a continent that is unaware of gluten awareness because of you.
Thank you.
How does that register with you?
You know, as you were phrasing the question, you said generational knowledge, and I never thought of it before, but what came up immediately is that family of choice is not family of origin. And that my mentors are my professional family, and they passed on their knowledge. You know, George Goodhart, and Jeff Bland, and Len Fay, and Jonathan Wright. I mean, those guys that really influenced me greatly in how to think. You know, George is so very, was well known because he would always say, every weekend course that he did, he'd always say, look with eyes that see, listen with ears that hear. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, Dr. George. Okay, whatever. I didn't get it. I was just too young. And now I get it. Now I understand that people can look at what's right in front of them and not see what's there. They don't see it. This world of wheat-related disorders is a classic example. When you look at the science, every single human has an immune reaction to exposure to wheat. Every human, every time. You activate toll-like receptor and the enzonulin production, so you get intestinal permeability, and you activate NF-kappa B, the major amplifier of inflammation in the gut, with every exposure. Well, that's just the science. But people they don't hear, listen with ears they hear. They don't hear that you can't argue with this.
Right.
You can't. When your immune system that's designed to protect you is activated, the question is always, how do I calm down the necessity of my immune system trying to protect me from something? But people don't want to hear that. They'll listen, but they don't want to hear.
It's a hard pill to swallow.
It's a hard pill to swallow.
And
grow up. You want to be healthy? Grow up.
So why is there such a disconnect and such?
It's the number one food in the world, and it's what we grew up on, and it's high in opiate receptor stimulation. Peptides.
I want you to talk about that. I literally just did some tests with a client and we talked about the gluteomorphins and he had elevation to that. So what does that feel like for someone that doesn't know about the science? What are the signs and symptoms to that?
Those people commonly say something to the effect of, I don't need to eat wheat. I just like it. The Pope in the 1880s, 1890s, the wine the Pope used for Mass had cocaine in it. It was called the Pope's wine. Well, I don't need cocaine. I just like it. And it's the same principle. We don't recognize that it's altering our brain function for many, many people. And when you've got gluteomorphin or prodynorphin antibodies elevated,
right,
you're activating those opiate receptors and your system you're creating lots of inflammation on those receptors because the immune system, the antibodies are going after the receptors themselves.
Right.
So you're stimulating. And just like, I used to use the analogy, if you rub your finger very gently or the back of your hand very gently, and okay, that's no big deal. But if I keep doing this, within 60 seconds, it's like, all right, that's enough. Okay, that's enough now.
Right.
It's annoying, right?
Yep.
So when you have antibodies that are going after your receptor again and again and again, first it's stimulatory. You activate the opiate receptors, but then you start dulling them down. It's the same concept with insulin resistance.
Right.
Right? It's just your receptors become resistant to insulin functioning, getting into escorting sugar into the cell.
Right.
You're resistant. So you need more sugar to get it into the cell.
I want to go back to that. Bring your hand up, and I want to for the audience and for the viewership. Dr. Tom was doing this with his finger, and this is sort of it's a symbol for ongoing inflammation and agitation. So let's say this is lasagna, or Mr. Sub Subway.
I don't need to eat lasagna. I just like it.
Right. And so you keep on doing that.
Right.
And that's causing the damage to the cell line.
Inflammation on the receptors themselves.
Right.
And then you downregulate receptor function.
Right.
Here comes depression. Here comes a lack of stimulation of your neurotransmitters. I call them brain hormones. They're not, but for the general public, they understand.
Sure.
When you say your brain hormones get altered so that you're out of balance in your hormones, here comes depression. Here comes anxiety. When you read the science, just Google schizophrenia and gluten, and you see all the studies that sometimes, not every time, but sometimes going on a gluten-free diet completely eliminates the symptoms of schizophrenia. And the psychiatrists that write the papers are startled. A year later, the person is still medication-free.
Right.
But if they slip and they go back to gluten again, they regress right back into the old symptom pattern. That you don't get rid of your diseases, you put them in remission.
Right.
You got rheumatoid. Now, after a year or two of doing functional medicine principles, you're completely symptom free. Well, that doesn't mean you don't have the vulnerability that if you go back to the old lifestyle, here comes that same symptom again.
Of course.
It's true across the board. And you can put your diseases into remission when you stop activating the inflammatory cascade.
You were talking about depression and anxiety and mood disorders. When someone is in that state, it makes it very difficult for them to have that foresight or the ability to change just because they're in such a lull. So how can they make some of those changes, and what are the tools that they can use and incorporate? Because if you're in a state of depression, you've got this cloud of rain over your shoulders all the time. So
there was a quote I saw a couple of days ago somewhere, and it said, "The day I realized I was broke because of my actions was the day it started to change."
The day I realized I was
broke, didn't have any money, was because of my own actions. It's not somebody else's fault.
Yep.
It's your responsibility. You're 100% responsible. Like in a marriage or in a relationship, you're 100% responsible. It's not 50-50.
Sure.
It's nonsense. It's 100-100, right?
Yep.
And when it's really hard when you suffer from schizophrenia or depression or anxiety, any altered physiological state, it's hard to take a step back and observe that state and say, wow, I'm in a state of depression right now. I wonder where that's coming from. Okay, it's always inflammation. Where's the inflammation coming from? Oh, wow, could it be ... And when you develop the skill to take a step back and look at the result of your life, then you have the opportunity to change direction,
right?
To do something different. But you can't do that. It's not that you can't. It's unlikely that you'll do that until you can take a step back and look with eyes that see.
Right.
Listen with ears that hear.
Okay, let's play devil's advocate a little bit. What about those same individuals that are listening to the authority in the white coat, and they're just being told that, oh, it's genetics, or it has nothing to do with the food that you're eating. It has everything to do with the brain chemistry, that the imbalance that you have. What about those individuals that are taking that for truth?
Isn't it great when you hear a gastroenterologist say food has nothing to do with your gut symptoms? It's just great.
I laugh every time.
I know. The kindest thing you can say is he has his head in dark places. that they just haven't read the science, or it's so challenging to the paradigm that they live by.
Of course.
They refuse to entertain the paradigm.
Well, and you being an educator for the Institute of Functional Medicine and so many other entities and bodies, governing bodies, how many times do doctors come to you and be like, hold on, you're telling me that I have to change my education?
Oh, it's really great. You know, when I start off a talk, I scan the audience. You know, when you see the audience, they're sitting like this.
Of course.
And they're talking to them like this. And then within a couple of minutes, when they're all of a sudden like this, I know I got them. I know I got them. That's why I start with science all the time.
Right.
Always. Just, here's the studies. You want to argue with this? All right, here's another one.
Yeah.
You want to argue with this one? All right, here's a third one. If you still want to argue, and, you know, you may have a hard time embracing it, but if you want to keep arguing, it's going to be a long day.
And so that's why I love you so much, and so many of your students do, because you have a tool belt, an arsenal of so much backed science and knowledge that they can't dismiss it. They can't argue.
Everyone should have that arsenal,
right?
Whatever your passion is, when you find something, wow, I didn't know that. When you find out, for example, that one of the highest concentrations of arsenic is in rice, and that the EPA tells us that arsenic is the most toxic chemical in the world today in terms of the scale of it. And then you read the study that says, look, if you parboil rice, so you boil 4 cups of water for every cup of rice you want to cook. You boil 4 cups of water, get it boiling, then put the rice in there and boil it for another 5 minutes, strain it off, and then add another cup of rice or another cup of water for every cup of rice, and you cook it till the water's gone. You've reduced 53% of the arsenic in white rice and 74% of the arsenic in brown rice.
Through evaporation?
Or boiling.
Okay.
You boil it, and then you pour the water off.
Got it.
Bye-bye arsenic.
Interesting.
And when you learn that, it's like, whoa, that's easy.
Can't undo it.
Yeah. And so that's what you have to learn with every aspect of your life. Stop putting nail polish on your hands and feet until you get organic nail polish, because the phthalates are in your bloodstream in 4 to 5 minutes. Now, there's no evidence that the amount of phthalates that leach into your bloodstream from applying nail polish is toxic to humans. There's absolutely no evidence of that. And I fully agree. And that's how they got away with this.
Sure.
But it's a cumulative.
Of course. Yeah.
It's a cumulative. So you give me a 5-year-old girl that paints her 10 little fingers and 10 little toes once a week for 20 years. Now she's 25 years old, and she's accumulated so many phthalates in her body. It has the potential of affecting baby's brain development in utero.
I had a client. She was stunningly beautiful. She was a paid runway model. She was a hair color model. So she got paid to have her hair colored at least once a month. And she was on magazines and all sorts of makeup.
Right.
And I think I took her on at maybe 39 or 40, full on Hashimoto's. Mm-hmm. And I presented some of your findings and some others. And I said, isn't it interesting that you are literally wearing the most makeup among women that I know, and here you are, you've got Hashimoto's. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because this is so applicable just to that little 5-year-old girl that's putting on nail polish and makeup. Yeah,
exactly right. That it's accumulative. And it's important for people to understand how this could be possible. It's the Toxic Substance Control Act of 1976, which is still the regulating guidelines in the United States at the federal level for the introduction of chemicals into our environment. And they paid off the senators and the congressmen to pass this legislation. There were those that were screaming, this is terrible. It's got no teeth. But they were silenced. They were called nutcases, fanatics.
Right.
But you have to prove that the amount of chemical you're exposed to within 24 hours is toxic to humans.
Can't do it.
It's not.
Right.
It's not. But it's accumulative.
Of course.
Plus, it's the 1 + 1 = 7 rule. that it's not just the phthalates in your nail polish, it's the organophosphates on your fruits and vegetables,
Yep.
and it's the lead in the water and the arsenic in the rice and all. No one's ever done any studies looking at the accumulation of chemicals. No one's ever studied this because the government won't finance the research. Why? Because the chemical industry makes sure that research is not funded. Because they've got it great. You have to prove that the amount of toxins you're exposed to in 24 hours is toxic to humans. It's not. And in Europe, in the European Union, they have over 10,000 chemicals that are not allowed on their shores in any form whatsoever. The United States has 12.
Say that one more time.
In Europe, in the European Union, they have over 10,000 chemicals completely forbidden to be introduced in any form whatsoever into their countries. Completely forbidden.
Right.
In the U.S., it's 12.
That's astonishing.
Yeah, yeah. And every year, the chemical industry pays the legislators to make sure nobody touches the TSCA.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody touches that.
So let's talk about that, the European Union. Let's talk about Italy and how apropos. I have so many clients, and I'm sure you do too. So many people will experience when they go to Italy, for example, and they have pasta and they're not bloated and they don't feel as though that their just digestion has been impaired, or diarrhea when they're on vacation. Why is that?
Yep.
And then also because a lot of people will say, well, I can eat gluten when I'm away over there.
Right.
What's the difference between the two? And that's a whole big conversation piece. So you can,
when you read the science, it's pretty clear that the proteins of wheat, the gluten and other proteins of wheat, they're responsible for activating the immune system, creating the inflammation. About 7% of gluten-sensitive people get gut symptoms. 93% don't.
7% do, 93 don't.
Right.
And so of those 93%,
gut symptoms are from the FODMAPs in the wheat. And so the fermentable carbohydrates, they cause the bloating and the gas and the cramping. So it's not the proteins of wheat. Now, the wheat in Europe is lower in FODMAPs. So people don't get the gut symptoms that they get when they eat wheat in the U.S. because it's lower in FODMAPs. But they still activate the immune system, creating the inflammation that's going after your Hashimoto's.
right?
Or after your MS, or after your rheumatoid, or your psoriasis. You just don't have gut symptoms when you eat the wheat over there. Mm-hmm. And so I've had a number of patients say, well, Doc, we're going to Italy. I can eat the pasta there. I said, no, you can't. Oh, no, I can because I don't feel bad when I eat there. No, it doesn't matter how you feel.
Right.
It's only 7% of the people that feel bad when they eat wheat and they get gut symptoms.
Right.
93% don't get gut symptoms.
And on one of our calls with my students in the curriculum, you said, and it's such an argument that they say, oh, I feel fine.
Yeah.
And this is applicable.
Matter how you feel.
Right.
It doesn't matter because you're using your gut as the monitor if something is safe or not. And it's a good monitor. If you feel bad, obviously you put something in there, you feel bad, it's a problem.
Right.
But when you don't feel bad, it doesn't mean there's no problem. It means there's no bloating, there's no gas, there's no cramping, which comes primarily from the FODMAPs, not from the proteins of wheat.
Right.
The proteins of wheat activate toll-like receptor, activate zonulin, activate leaky gut, activate macromolecules getting into the bloodstream, activating the immune system, protecting you from those macromolecules. Now you have systemic inflammation.
Right. Now, you caught me off guard once when I said, well, what about just a little bit? Once in a while.
The Supremes had a great song, just a little bit, just a little bit. No, you can't because toll-like receptors get activated at nanogram amounts of components of wheat that come out of the stomach into the intestine.
Right.
You've got these receptors that are standing guard just inside the first part of the small intestine because you really don't absorb things into your bloodstream from your stomach. It's rare.
Right.
That it's got to get into the intestines. Then it goes into the bloodstream, and now you're off to the races. So the protection is in the first part of the intestines. And toll-like receptors are watching everything that comes out of the stomach. And they're dormant. They're like the guards at Buckingham Palace, the guys with big hats.
Yep.
They're just standing there. They're dormant. They don't do anything. Don't mess with those guys. Don't mess with them, because they're just scanning to make sure there's no bugs in the food that you've eaten. If there's bugs, this is a life-saving mechanism from our ancestors. Those that didn't have good toll-like receptor function, when they pick something up and they eat it, had a bug, it killed them. They're gone.
Right.
They didn't reproduce. But those that had good toll-like receptor function, they activate, they turn on zonulin. So here comes a leaky gut. They turn on NF-kappa B. Here comes inflammation. Kill the bug, wash it out. That's why leaky gut's so healthy for you. It's a really good thing. Excessive leaky gut is not.
Right.
Right? So it's the toll-like receptors that protect you. They're standing guard. And they get activated at nanogram. That's a billionth of a gram. That's all it takes to activate them. So I can have a little. No, you can't, because you activate the immune response. Now let's talk about how long that lasts.
Sure.
When you activate an immune response to a food, if you get a vaccination for measles, they give you a shot of the bug measles.
Yep.
And your brain says, whoa, what's that in the bloodstream? We better fight that. You general, and you've got Army, Air Force, Marine Corps generals sitting around with nothing. You're General Measles. Take care of this. General Measles builds an assembly line. The assembly line starts producing soldiers. They're called antibodies. And they're highly trained to go just after measles. That's all they do is go after measles. So they're in the bloodstream. They're looking for me. In your bloodstream, everything's going in the same direction, but there's no highways. There's no organization. It's like bumper cars, right? Bouncing into each other. But they're so precise, they go after whatever they were trained to go after.
Right.
So they go after the measles from the vaccination, and they kill the measles bug from the vaccination. Well, General Measles that built the assembly line, he's watching all of this. And when all the measles from the vaccination have been killed off, General Measles says, okay, turn off the assembly line. We don't need soldiers anymore. You shouldn't have measles antibodies in your bloodstream right now, unless you've been exposed. But if you're on a plane and the guy behind you is from Mozambique and he just coughed into the air measles bug and you inhale measles bug, General Measles is vigilant the rest of his life. Never goes away. Some of the generals are lifelong with you. Some of them have a lifespan of 20 years. Mm-hmm. But you inhale measles, General Measles is what? Oh, measles. He just has to flip the switch. He doesn't have to take the 2 months to build the assembly line again. So in one day, you now have measles antibodies in your bloodstream to kill the bug that you inhaled from the guy behind you who coughed into the air.
Right.
That's how vaccinations are supposed to work, mm-hmm. right? It's a great thing. It's a great system. It takes a couple of months to build those assembly lines. Then when the bug from the vaccination's all gone, General Measles says, okay, turn off the assembly line. We don't need any more soldiers right now. But General Measles is vigilant the rest of his life. He's just dormant. He's like the guards at Buckingham Palace. He doesn't do anything. But if measles comes in, he just has to flip the switch.
Right.
And then you have to wait the 2 months to build the assembly line. In one day, you've got the antibodies out there. So when you have an exposure to wheat, you activate general gluten or general gluteomorphin, general prodimorphin, it just depends. But right. You activate, they're called memory B cells. And they never forget. And within one day, you've activated the immune system, turned on the assembly line. Here comes a systemic inflammation that's going to go for at least 2 months now.
Okay.
And the lifespan of the antibodies you're producing is anywhere from 2 to 3 months. So the assembly line is going for 2 months or so.
Yep.
And the antibodies that are coming out, they've got a lifespan of 2 to 3 months. So you now, from a single exposure, have elevated antibodies for 4 to 5 months, killing off thyroid cells, killing off, if that's your vulnerability, or sure. Killing off brain cells, or killing off joint cells.
Yep.
You've got this systemic inflammation. There's no such thing as a cheat day. Stop that. You just want to be nice to your patients. Understand, well, I'm going to eat this today. If you make a conscious choice, and I know I'm going to have inflammation for a couple of months, but I really want to eat a piece of my daughter's birthday cake, and I'll take some nutritional action to minimize the consequences. If it's a conscious choice, good for you. It's your right.
Yeah.
To give yourself permission to eat whatever you want, but don't embrace a false concept that it's okay to have a cheat day and there's no consequences.
Right.
Absolute nonsense. No science to that whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And plenty of science for what I just laid to you.
And so ultimately, there are sort of micro and macro consequences to that and to that choice.
I really wish I could eat croissants. I love croissants.
Right.
Right.
But you've consciously made that decision.
Exactly.
Because you know that those consequences will weaken your immune system or overly stimulate it.
Oh, I'll be fine in a couple of days. All right. But you've killed off so many brain cells in those couple of days. How many brain cells do you have extra?
Right.
I'm 72. I don't have a lot of extra brain cells. My wife tells me I've lost too many already. Right? But, you don't want to play Russian roulette with your body.
And so this is just longevity 101.
That's right.
The desire to live a long, fruitful, vibrant life as long as we can and help ourselves out as much as we can.
That's exactly right. The primary goal, is to extend healthy lifespan so it's much closer to total lifespan. The average in our country now is about 20 years gap between healthy lifespan and total lifespan.
Right.
Meaning all these people, they've got diagnoses and they've got disabilities.
Sure.
20 years. That's the national average.
And there are so many professionals that will say, well, hold on a second. Lifespan is so much longer now. Right. We are more healthier than ever.
You want to sit in a wheelchair in a nursing home drooling during the afternoon? Do you want to do that?
No.
Yeah. No.
Right. So, and that's where you talk about that a lot in your book, Autoimmune Fix. And I don't know what the order of operation was. My first mentor had been educated by you at many, many, many conferences. And I think he may have introduced me, or it was maybe the Gluten Summit or the Betrayal. I can't remember. And then it turned into this book. And then it turned into me enrolling into your certified gluten practitioner course, one of your first enrollees in that program.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And this book, I've gotten almost all of my students to purchase and read it because it's such an amazing tool. And that's ultimately what you're just talking about, just the autoimmune stimulation and just ongoing attack to the body.
We're working on a new concept right now. And it was offered to me and I said, oh, okay. And that is, there was a woman in Croatia, who health-oriented person and is in the health field and had symptoms develop and they got a little bit better, but not completely. She worked with me and got really good results. Okay. She said, would you work with some of our clients? I work with one person every couple of weeks. My focus is on identifying where are the emergency brakes when people are trying to be healthier. You back out of a driveway and the car's moving. You say, well, what's wrong with this car? The emergency brake. And you let go of the emergency brake, then you back up just fine, right?
Sure.
When people are trying to be healthier and they're not getting the results they want, they've got emergency brakes. It's 101. There's something inhibiting the progress for the effort they're putting out.
That's such a good analogy.
Yeah. It's basic. It's always that way, without exception.
So something's happening and the body's just yanking on that emergency brake.
They're saying, whoa, we're not going down that road too quickly. Let's slow down here.
Right.
Whatever it should be.
Sure.
So I said, well, how many people do you have? And it was 23, I think. But, I don't. Okay. But this is what they have to do. You do these 7 tests first. Yep. You read both of my books, then we'll talk.
Right.
And it's been fabulous because when people read the books or listen to the audio. I did the audio for the second book. I'm very proud of it.
It's a lot of work doing an audio book.
It's the most difficult thing I've ever done in my life. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, I was a deshi in a martial arts school in Japan, which meant that I got to clean the toilets for the Grand Master. It was a great honor, but I mean, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's really hard living. But this was the hardest thing I ever did. Was the audio for You Can Fix Your Brain, because it's 8 hours a day, for 4 days, and I have to be conscious for every sentence.
Sure.
I can't be thinking about lunch,
Yeah.
When I'm reading, I can't be thinking about something else. I have to stay focused all the time.
Well, and you wrote it, and it's difficult for you that wrote it. Now you're reading it, and no one speaks like they read.
The emphasis.
Right.
Right.
And
right.
so I get it.
Right. So I knew I nailed it. It was the last sentence of the book. It was really great. The sound engineer, the publisher flew me out to Berkeley, and I would go to this studio where here's the pictures of the Rolling Stones and Little Richard and Elvis. They all recorded in this studio. So it was really cool, And so I'm in this studio, and there's the sound engineer behind the glass with all of his dials and stuff. And he's got a beard, and he's got tattoos coming up his neck, out of his shirt, up his neck and down his arms. He's a Harley guy, right? And I knew I nailed it because I read the last sentence of the book, and I looked up and he was crying. Yes, got him. Because his son had autism, and he finally understood where it came from.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was great. It was really great.
Have you ever, hold on a second. You were in a recording studio that rock stars, world famous rock stars recorded in.
Yes.
Have you considered yourself a rock star in the functional medicine space and in just all of alternative health? Because you are.
Well, thank you. That's really difficult for me. My wife reminds me every day. I'm a jerk like everybody else, right? But in this one place, my mentors really helped me, and I've got a big picture view that I think is really a great.
That's so beautiful.
I do.
So beautiful.
I do. So this, so I did the narration for the book,
which is right here, and this is an uncomfortable read. I've said this to you before. There's a lot of uncomfortable truths for the reader to stumble or come across.
Yes,
but we're not here for field of daisies. We're here for truth telling.
Says I can have a cheat day once in a while. No, you can't. No, you can't without paying a price. And the price takes 2 to 4 months for any exposures. Oh, and where I wanted to go with that about memory B cells. Yep. This is how I wanted to complete that.
Okay.
The only food for which I know you create memory B cells that are lifelong is wheat. If you Google memory B cells in soy, there's no studies. Memory B cells in dairy, I can't find any studies. Memory B cells in gluten, here come the studies. Because it's not a food for humans. We've made it a food in the last 10,000 years since we started agriculture, and it's saved millions and millions of lives, no question about it.
Yep.
But it activates an immune response in every human. And every autoimmune disease is going up 4 to 9% a year, every year right now. Life expectancy has creeped up a little bit, but healthy life expectancy has not kept pace. So the gap is bigger. More people have more years in a wheelchair or with disability than ever before in history.
What about that statistic now that parents are outliving their children?
Yeah. As of 6 or 7 years ago, the average lifespan, the predicted lifespan for newborn children is less than the predicted lifespan of the parents.
Like, just think about that for a second.
And we stay numb to that. If you thought about that for a minute, you say, wait, what?
Yeah.
What? But we're numb to it because we don't know what to do. That's why it's so important. Can you read the subtitle of that book?
You Can Fix Your Brain. Hold on. Just 1 hour a week to the best memory, productivity, and sleep you've ever had.
That's the only way that you can, in my opinion, that you can be successful in changing the direction of your health. It's the only way. Well, what do you mean? 1 hour a week? It's so overwhelming.
Yep.
That this week, you go back to the book and the 3 URLs for glass storage containers, because you learn that plastic storage containers leach phthalates into the food. And when you eat the chicken the next day from the Tupperware, it's got phthalates in it that weren't in it when you bought it.
Right.
It came from the Tupperware container, right? So you order, you go to Miles Kimball or Amazon. I give you 3 URLs and you say, well, those are, I like those.
Yeah.
And you order 3 round ones and 2 square ones and 1 for the pie, and you pay with your credit cards and you're done. It took an hour. You're done for the week.
Yep.
But never again will you poison your family with minute amounts of toxins from the storage containers.
Sure.
And then next week, you go to organic lipstick, because lipstick has got phthalates and lots of chemicals and gluten in it.
Yeah.
And you look for organic lipsticks and you order some and, it comes and you try, you don't like that one, but, oh, this one's okay. I could do this.
Sure.
And then next week, you learn about houseplants and how they absorb over 70% of the toxins in the air. And then next week, you learn about flame retardant chemicals, and they're in your sheets and your blankets that you're breathing when you go to sleep every night. Well, I've washed them 5 times. Doesn't matter. You wash them 50 times. They still have chemicals in them.
Right.
But there's no evidence that the amount of flame retardant chemicals that leach into the air and you breathe during the night is toxic to humans. There's no evidence. That's how they get away with it.
Of course. What about, I love when you discuss the coffee cups and the takeaway coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Because people don't think about that. And this is just one more thing that they can do.
That's exactly right. You get stainless steel container. You go to your coffee shop, say, fill it up, please.
Yep.
Yeah. But 1 hour a week. And in 6 months, you've completely changed your life. And it wasn't stressful.
Right.
Because you gave yourself permission to just do a little bit at a time. That's really the biggest hurdle to getting healthy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Is that people have been trained. They want results now.
Right.
And, well, that's good. I mean, if you got symptoms and you just want to cut the wire to the dashboard that says hot, 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 you cut the wire.
Sure.
That's fine. But it's going to catch up to you somewhere.
Yep.
But if you take 1 hour a week and just start transitioning lifestyle, and then you learn about foods and which foods are okay for your family, which ones are not. In 6 months, you go to church and someone you haven't seen, wow, what happened to you? Wow, you look so young and you lost some weight. Did you lose weight? Did you go on a diet? Well, no, I didn't go on a diet. I just got gluten and dairy out of my life and I started shedding pounds within a week. It was really remarkable. What? Gluten? Oh, you're one of those. Right?
Of course.
You're one of those nutcases that talks about being gluten-free.
Yep.
But when you read the science, it's really clear. You want to extend your healthy lifespan and shorten the gap between healthy lifespan and total lifespan.
Yeah.
You want to shorten that gap of being diseased.
I really like how you said, give yourself permission.
Yeah.
Because I think there's just a lot of people, they don't give themselves permission.
They've not been told it's okay to give themselves permission to take it slow. Well, I'm supposed to get it now. I'm supposed to be healthy now. No, you're not.
Yeah.
That's just marketing from the pharmaceutical industry. So you keep buying the stuff that cuts the wire to the dashboard. So the hot light doesn't come on anymore.
Of course. Now,
Brandon! Something happens inside us when we get inspired to change ourselves, change our nutrition, our fitness. But we really do need to visualize to see and feel how we want to be. And for that, we need a plan.
No, you need a plan.
I want you to
We need
say,
a plan.
We need a plan.
You said
We
we,
need a
so
plan.
I don't know.
Brandon Coates is the author of the 30-Day Challenge to a Healthier, Happier, Stronger You. Let Brandon into your lives for just 30 days. It'll be epic, I can promise you. Because for some of you, maybe it is time to bust out of what you are. It's the 30-Day Challenge to a Healthier, Happier, Stronger You. Available direct at brendancoates.ca. And go behind the scenes with Brendan for each and every episode of the Gut Gang Podcast. That's available everywhere you get your podcasts. Brandon! I think this podcast is going to be fun, pretty fun, and different than the other podcasts.
for someone that's watching and listening right now, there's so many things that you can do right now. I would say for resources, watch the Gluten Summit. Right. Then watch Betrayal for sure. They're both still online.
And
then
inflammation equation.
That's the new one.
Came out.
Right. The inflammation equation. Then you've got the autoimmune fix. Classic, obviously still global bestseller, which is incredible.
Yeah. It was #1 last year in South Korea. I was really surprised for health books.
Yeah.
Really. Oh, great.
Amazing.
It's in 9 or 10 languages now. You know, my friend Dale Bredesen. Dale, how's your book doing? It's in 27 languages. Oh, you dog. I'm only in 9.
Only. Well, what genre? Which book is the one that you're talking about?
With Dr. Bredesen?
Yes.
Reversing Alzheimer's.
Okay. Got it. Well, it'll happen eventually.
It'll happen eventually.
And then you've got this one, You Can Fix Your Brain, also global best-selling book.
Yes.
So What's happening now in the space of nutrition and gluten awareness? There's a lot of old science. Has it gotten better for us?
Yeah, it has.
Or
We just launched the inflammation equation, and it's current, cutting edge, state of the art. So the basic 101 concept that no one talks about until now it's becoming discussion regularly. I'm seeing it now because we launched this, that the CDC tells us that 14 of the 15 top causes of death in the world today are chronic inflammatory diseases. It's always inflammation.
Sure.
Always, except for unintentional injuries, an accident.
Yeah.
Everything else is chronic inflammation when you think you're fine. But the inflammation under the surface is killing off tissue, killing off tissue, killing off tissue. Always, without exception. It's basic 101. And so I traveled to 7 countries, interviewed 64 the experts, and David Furman at the Buck Institute in Stanford, and he's got the contract with NASA to figure out why are the astronauts aging so quickly in space. Dale Bredesen, our friend Dale Bredesen, Yehuda Schoenfeld, Tel Aviv, Israel, the godfather of autoimmunity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the list goes on and on. Jeff Bland, of course, the founder of functional medicine.
Sure.
And I brought them all back to just this basic concept. Well, Professor Schoenfeld, Professor, how often is inflammation the mechanism in the development of autoimmune diseases? And he just went, what kind of a question is that? And they said, always.
Right.
Always, without exception, always. It's inflammation. So if you hold this concept as 101, this is the basic. 101 means if you go to university, you start with English classes. The first one you take is 101. You learn the basics, then 102. And then next year you do 201 and then 202. And then next year, and then you start to specialize. But you always start with 101. If people begin with 101, okay, am I inflamed? Well, I don't feel inflamed. I feel fine. I don't have any symptoms. I'll wager $1,000 you're inflamed. I'll wager it. And you do the right tests.
Yep.
Then what? That can't be right. Well, if you want to do the test again, you can. And very few people will pay the money to do the test again. But those that do say, wow, this is right on the money. Wow. So my brain is really inflamed right now. And so if I have inflammation, does that mean I'm killing off cells? Yes. That's the definition of low-grade inflammation. Killing off tissue, killing off tissue, killing off tissue, until you eventually kill off so much tissue. Now you start to get some symptom of that system,
right?
Whether it's your brain or your kidneys or your gallbladder.
Yep.
Well, they told me I've got kidney stones. Well, that didn't happen yesterday, right? That's been going on for quite a while, but you didn't feel it and no one measured you to see if your metabolism was out of balance.
Sure.
So it's always inflammation. So when you watch the inflammation equation, it's about 45 minutes a day for 9 days, and it's all free. But when you watch, you say, wow, that just makes sense. You begin to reframe how you think. And that's the key. Because if you reframe how you think, when your child develops some symptoms, whatever they should be, then you think differently. Okay, he's got this skin problem right now. Okay, so how do we fix the skin? No, wait a minute. It's inflammation. Okay, so where might the inflammation be coming from that's manifesting as the skin problem right now?
Yep.
When you start thinking that way, you are much more successful at keeping you and your family healthy.
And that's where your teachings and your documentaries, that's where it comes in perfectly, because not only, I call it like almost info edutainment kind of, right? Because it's informational.
That's a compliment.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But they're learning in real time, but at the same time, they're learning the ability to ask critical questions.
Ask questions. Just be selective. It's like, it's okay to have a cheat day. No, it's not, but it's okay to ask questions.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Right.
You ask questions, and you don't have to be a medical doctor or a PhD to ask questions about your family's health.
Sure.
And you don't want technical information, but you want basic common sense stuff. Well, doctor, why are we using this medication? How is it going to help besides getting rid of the symptoms? How is it going to deal with the inflammation? You know, I was privileged to write a chapter in 2 cardiovascular medicine textbooks. And in one, I wrote the concept that atherosclerosis is a lipid storage disease, meaning fats,
Right.
fat storage disease, is a historical misconception. That it was proven in 1986 that atherosclerosis, the plugging up of your pipes, is an inflammatory disease. It's always inflammation that creates the foam cells that plugs up your pipes. Always.
Right.
So the cardiologist is now caught and must address the patient from 2 different worlds. First, deal with their symptoms, whatever they are. Use your medications if you need to for high blood pressure or beta blockers or whatever it is. But second, where is the inflammation coming from? If you're only doing the first approach, then you're doing a half-assed job, excuse me.
Yep.
But this patient's not going to extend their total healthy lifespan by following your recommendation the way you've given it to them. That's a component. Of course, you take the medications if you have high blood pressure.
Sure.
But you also have to explore where is the inflammation coming from. And when you go gluten-free, or when you go dairy-free, or when you do a therapeutic diet, whether it's keto or paleo or vegetarian, whatever it should be,
Sure.
when you start to change the lifestyle while you're on the medications, what happens is you need less medication because your body's functioning better and the inflammation's going down. Every patient that comes to me on high blood pressure medication, well, doc, can I stop the medication? No. Call your doctor and say, look, I'm going to start an eating style, a different diet. I'm going to exercise. I might take a few vitamins. Can you monitor me so that, because they tell me that as I get healthier, if I take the same dose of medication, I could get dizzy because my blood pressure goes too low.
Right.
Can you monitor me while I'm in this program? I hope it helps, but I really feel safer if you monitor me. Every doctor will say yes to that.
Well, and you empower the doctor, you kind of keep them in control. And of course,
Exactly. Because they know that medications are short-term fix.
Sure.
They just don't have anything else that they can do because they weren't trained in holistic or functional medicine.
Okay, so let's almost conclude this with the books, your documentaries, your certification course for gluten practitioners. It's open also for the public.
Yes,
right?
It is. And we've had a number of general public that have done it. I've had some chefs do it.
Yeah.
And it's easy. I mean, it's not really technical. There's some technical stuff, but I explain it in everyday language.
Yep.
You may have to listen to it twice in some parts, but it's, okay, that makes sense.
Right. So what else can they do? What else do you have that's available, or what else is coming up in the future just in this space and in this field?
Well, the first step would be the inflammation equation, because that sets the paradigm.
Right.
Okay, so I just need to do this 101 stuff of where's the inflammation coming from? Yes. Well, how do I find out where the inflammation is coming from? Read You Can Fix Your Brain. Read The Autoimmune Fix. There's all the triggers in there that you have to rule out.
Yep.
Right? But if you don't have the paradigm, it's very difficult to stay immersed. But you give it 1 hour a week with the paradigm, and the result is in 6 months, you're a different body, a completely different body.
What's been your favorite, off the top of your head, sort of health transformation? What have you seen some of the most challenging health conditions just with some simple changes? What have you seen?
Oh, everything. Women with recurrent miscarriages that have a healthy pregnancy and delivery. Children with asthma that don't need their inhalers anymore. You know, my wife, her history as a child, she was in the ER, not quite once a month, but pretty close to that for years because she couldn't breathe at all. And they rushed her to the hospital. And when she was 19 and she moved from rural Poland to Ireland, and there was a healthcare system. So she went in and had a female exam, and they told her that she had abnormal pap smears. come back in 6 months. And so she went back, and that happened for 3.5 or 4 years, every 6 months. Same thing. Well, okay, it's positive. Come back. We'll check it again.
Right.
And then one day the doc left the room and she looked at her file and she saw cancer, precancerous cells. And she just freaked her out. Up until that time, she was just believing the doctor, just going along. Okay, I'll come back.
Yeah. Why wasn't there no course of action or anything like that between those 6 months?
Nothing. And so then she talked to a friend who was a nutritionist, and she said, stop gluten today. Stop gluten now. And coincidentally, when she realized what she read in her file, she talked to her mother, who said that her grandmother had died of cervical cancer. And so she realized that there might be some genetic connection here.
Sure.
Right? So she stopped gluten. The very next pap smear, completely normal. Never was positive. She checked it for a couple years, every 6 months, never was positive again. It was wheat.
Yeah.
That was the trigger
Right.
for her.
Yeah.
So you see those kinds of results on a regular basis, and it just gives you pause, and you're on the right track with the message you're carrying on.
Amazing. Would you be so kind, if you still remember it, could you quote or just summarize your favorite poem by George Bernard Shaw?
Yeah. This is the true joy in life. The being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one. The being a force of nature, instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I'm of the opinion my life belongs to the whole, and it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. Life is no brief candle to me. It's a sort of splendid torch I have a hold of for the moment and want to make burn as brightly as possible before passing it on to future generations.
How appropriate.
Yes.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
How would you like to conclude after that? Just one last message to the world.
Wake up.
You heard it from here first. The doctor's doctor, the people's doctor, the doctor of the world. If you've heard of gluten awareness because of this man right here. So thank you so much. And we look forward to you watching on the next episode. And hold on, my mom's pointing something out really quick. Okay, sure. And my mom's doing all the back end. So, okay, a quick question from the...
So when we get home to Burlington from Costa Rica, we have a smell test.
Oh, yes.
That we're gonna
Yes. I purchased one of your smell test kits.
Marvelous.
Everyone can do they still have access to that through your website? Do you want to talk about that really quickly?
Oh, it's really, I haven't known how to get the message out on that effectively.
This is it. This is going to be the tipping point right now.
Yeah, good.
Because we're going to do it after.
Yeah, we'll document it and
marvelous.
Yeah.
Marvelous.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
I started reading some science about smell. I came across an article and I said, really? That if you have a loss of your sense of smell, if it's reduced, called hyposmia, it means a reduction in your sense of smell, your lifespan is much shorter. If you are 49 and you have hyposmia, the increased risk of mortality in the next, I think it was 7 years, was very high. What? And this was a high quality study. What? And so I looked at the author and I reached out to him. Richard Doty, University of Pennsylvania, is the godfather of smell research. And I said, is this accurate? He said, yes. And I said, wow. And then he sent me some studies, and I've read many, many studies now. Our ancestors, before agriculture, were nomads. They followed the herds. Their primary concern was always food. Where are they going to find food? Then shelter and safety. Mm-hmm. But first it was food. When they found something, they pick it up. The first thing they do, smell it. Then they nibble at it. Then they eat it. And it was so questionable, the human body developed two primary life-saving mechanisms for our ancestors. The first is smell, that I'll come back to. The second, toll-like receptors in the proximal part of the small intestine. Anything coming out of the stomach that looks like a bug activates that whole cascade that we've talked about. But the first is smell. The olfactory nerves, the nerves of smell, they're the only nerves in the body. And I've asked a number of neurologists, they'll say, well, yeah, I remember hearing that. Never thought about it, but yeah. The only nerves in the body that go right into the brain with no screen whatsoever, no filters, no anastomosis, just straight back past the memory center of the brain. Why? Because you need to be able to tell if something is not safe for you.
Right.
Or you're walking down the trail, you need to smell saber-toothed tiger really quickly. Smell is a life-saving mechanism. So the sense of smell, and those that didn't have a good sense of smell, they died. They didn't reproduce. Their progeny didn't continue. Those that had a good sense of smell reproduced. Those genetics got passed down. Every one of us today has those genetics or smell. When you begin losing your sense of smell, very common now, especially for those that had virus vaccinations.
Yeah.
When you begin losing your sense of smell, it is a marker that the memory center of your brain is going. Because you can't recognize the smell of cinnamon, or you can't recognize the smell of leather, or whatever it should be. Your brain's on fire. The hippocampus is on fire. Your memory center is on fire. And you're losing brain cells. And the result is, I'm not smelling the way I used to. That Chinese food doesn't smell as good as it used to. It's a biomarker of degeneration of the area of your brain called the hypothalamus, the memory center. Hippocampus.
Right.
Hippocampus, the memory center of the brain. And this test is extremely accurate. This test is 94% comparable to the most expensive smell tests in research universities around the world. This little smell test, it's like a lottery ticket. You scratch it, and there are 4 options. What does it smell like? Is that leather, strawberry, raspberry, or gasoline? And you mark it and then turn the page. And you do the next one. And you mark it, turn the page. And there's 12 of them. And after the 12th one, you turn the page. There's the answers. If you scored 9 or less correct, you've got hyposmia. It's so simple. And it's such a great screen to say, you need to put some attention on the inflammation in your brain right now, because the memory center of your brain is going.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
So it's a general screen. And when that comes back positive, then you do the Neural Zoomer Plus and you measure how many antibodies are attacking my brain right now.
And for those that don't know, the Neural Zoomer Plus is a test that you can order through various practitioners, Vibrant Labs. I also offer the same tests. And then what happens if they see those results?
Oh, it scares the hell out of you. It's like, whoa, what? Because you see that you've got 7, 9, 13, 22 different antibodies killing off tissue in your brain. And anytime they're elevated, they're not dormant. It means, by definition, elevated antibodies, you're killing off more cells than you're making. That's the definition of elevation.
So really quick then, what are, let's say, some of the easiest contributing factors to those things causing the antibodies in the brain?
Yeah. The most common trigger, 2 have been identified. This is what they're teaching at Harvard. The 2 most common triggers, environmental triggers, that activate the leaky gut, the systemic inflammation, and when you have leaky gut, you get leaky brain, are gluten and LPS. Those are the 2.
Lipopolysaccharides, found in or caused by?
Gram-negative bacteria in gut. Too many bad guys in your gut, not enough good guys.
Right. So amazing. We finally got to do this, right? And it's easy for people. There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Just take one step at a time. Just 1 hour a week. and you'll be very successful. Oh, I could do more. Well, if you want to, you can, of course, but don't overburden yourself and make it stressful.
Yeah. So go to thedoctor.com, best website in the world. Get yourself a scent test. Order some of the books. You can get them on Amazon. They're all over. Watch the documentaries, the newest one, Inflammation Equation, and just start up, donating 1 hour a week to yourself. And I guarantee, because I've seen it, you're going to get better, healthier, and happier and stronger. Thank you.
I'm going to be bold.
Okay.
Here, if I may.
Please.
Absorb my information first. Absorb the inflammation equation and then the books that explains all of those triggers.
Okay.
When you absorb that, everything else you hear in the world of holistic healthcare has a place.
Right.
It makes sense and you can compartmentalize everything that you learn.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have the 101 first.
Yeah.
Or else it's so overwhelming, you're spinning your plates. You're spinning your tires in the sand. Or the dog chasing its tail.
Yeah.
Because we're going for what's the next thing that's going to help me feel better? Well, maybe this will give you more energy, or maybe I should try that. But when you identify where the inflammation is coming from, and you address those triggers of inflammation, everything starts to calm down.
Mm-hmm.
Then a better form of coenzyme Q10 can really help.
Right.
Or vitamin C or B complex or whatever it should be.
Of course. Of course. Great. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. We got to get you to sign these.
Sure.
Okay, that wraps up this episode of the Gut Gang podcast. Thanks so much for being part of the Gut Gang community. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and even leave a comment. Your feedback fuels our growth. And also, here's something special. If you want more exclusive content, be sure to become part of the private Gut Gang members-only community, where you get to see behind-the-scenes bonus segments in my cold plunge and the sauna with each of the podcast guests. That's right. Part of the podcast series is having the guests hang out with me for the whole day at my place, biohacking, taking cold plunges, going in the sauna, even a coffee tasting where we hook up all the mics and the cameras and we shoot the entire experience. You definitely don't want to miss out on this action. So I'll see you over there. Gut Whisperer out.